Okay.
All right. I'd like to call to order the October 1st, 2025 special meeting of the South Burlington School Board. The first item on our agenda is a projected executive session. I would entertain a motion to find that what we're going to talk about in this executive session, namely employment of a public officer or employee, and to receive confidential attorney-client communication for the purpose of providing legal services to the board, would place the school district at significant disadvantage.
Make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing employment of a public officer, to receive confidential attorney-client communication for the purpose of providing legal services to the board, and labor negotiations.
I will move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
We are now going into executive session. We will have Dr. Joe Clark, our superintendent, with us. We may be joined by other staff or legal counsel, and I will provide an update when we get back. So, thank you.
Yes. Still say that. But
Yes, you're getting the wings.
Oh.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, that's. Yeah, I think I know where it is. Big red barn. Yeah. Are they shredding like in the bottom? Yeah.
Right, I'll call the special meeting of the South Burlington School Board on October 1st, 2025. Back to order. We just did an hour of executive session. We talked about employment of a public officer, receiving confidential attorney-client communication for the purpose of providing legal services to the board, and labor negotiations. And our one guest was Dr. Joe Clark, our superintendent. So our first item on the agenda is announcements and amendments to the agenda. Does anyone have any announcements or amendments to the agenda? So, announcement. I was contacted by Andrew Chelnick, a city councilor, and he suggested that the school board look into saving money through a solar power purchasing agreement. And so I forwarded his suggestion on to Joe Clark for investigation. He was saying that the tax breaks will be up next year, and so he thought there was some urgency to it, so I turned that over to Joe for investigation. And now we'll have our next agenda item, comments from the public. And I'll just read the guidelines for public comment. There are two opportunities for the public to comment. Number one, during comments from the public about any topic, that's right now. So if you want to talk about anything, please do talk about it now. And then also we'll take comment from the public before the board takes action on an action item, but only on the topic being action. So if we are on a discussion item, we won't take public comment on it. The board will not respond to public comments unless this meeting is a specially designated community forum and the comment on a topic warrant on the community forum agenda. So we last had a community forum September 17th, and we have not scheduled another one yet. Each person will be given up to 3 minutes. Please don't violate anyone's privacy, and you cannot file an official complaint or grievance using public comment. So anybody who'd like to help.
Hello, everybody. Daisy Brayton, and I'm your HR director. I just wanted to briefly touch base on, I noticed that one of the discussion items, F is about the permanent search, superintendent search. And I just wanted to let you know, your HR team is ready and raring to go and anxious to get that started, as we know that, I took a quick look at the American Association of Superintendents. And they have a listing of superintendent openings, and there's about 13 of them right now that I think would directly compete with us. So, yes, we're raring and ready to go, and if you wanted my input, I would say the sooner the better. Thanks.
Is there anyone online?
Jerry.
Would you start with whoever? Yep, yeah, we'll start with Jerry. Jerry, go ahead.
So my comment, I'll phrase as a question. Are there any situations where the South Burlington School District does not, emphasis on the word not, have to obey the laws of the state of Vermont, such as those laws governing public records requests submitted through appropriate channels? That's my comment. I know you don't always answer questions, but you can take that question under advisement at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Would you recognize Bridget?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm picking up a child from a sporting event, so I am in the car. Not driving though. I just wanted to reiterate something that I think I've said in the past, which is I'm disappointed to see so many things that really should be on a regular school board meeting agenda on a special meeting, especially an action item on a new policy that is being implemented. It makes it really hard for the public to participate when there are so many different meetings. And I think it would be really helpful for the relationship with the community if more of these things could be done during regular school board meetings rather than special meetings. Thanks.
Any other public comment? Took one more. Elizabeth?
Hi, thank you, Seamus. I don't know if there is an announcement on the agenda today, but I did want to take a minute, and I see Jessie is in the room, so she can add some comment as well. But there is a city council agenda for the October 6th meeting on Monday that Acting Police Chief Briscoe and Superintendent Joe Clark will be talking about school safety with an emphasis on implications for community safety as well. And I just want to make sure that's information is available to the audience today and to the school community too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the next action items. So it's a little weird tonight. The agenda goes action, discussion, and then back to action. So the first two action items are related to nominating or designating a school board member to vote on behalf of the school board at the VSBA, Vermont School Boards Association, and the VEHI VisBit, which is the Vermont Education Health Initiative, Vermont School Boards Insurance Trust annual meetings. So on the first action, which is the Vermont School Board Association's annual meeting, Laura, can you give us a little information about that?
Yeah, well, so their meeting, I think, is October 23rd, mistaken. And so they have a business meeting where they have, they have different things come to a vote. I was unable to attend the past 2 years, so we didn't have anybody voting. So it's the annual meeting, which is, it's in Burlington this time. And it is.
October 23rd.
I was right, so October 23rd. And 24th, so they usually have the business meeting in the evening. And I actually can't remember what, I wasn't able to attend the past couple of times, so if someone's going to attend the meeting, it's very difficult for me to take, I cannot take so much personal time in the job for this job. So it's pretty easy, you just listen, there's a financial report, you vote to approve the budget, and just things like that, kind of what. So pretty straightforward. In terms of the Visbit annual meeting, so I know I'm just gonna go into that, I should not be. I should not be there because I am a teacher. So, as far as I know, we haven't had anybody, a voting member from this board there. But there are people on from the VSBA who serve on the committee, and they all. So. So I don't know if anybody is interested in doing one or the other. I do plan on going to the business meeting on the 23rd, so I could do that. Yeah, and then if somebody wants to, again, we haven't had anybody vote for this, and I have to recuse myself because I'm a teacher.
So you're saying, okay, so we're talking about first designating a school board member to vote on behalf of the South Burlington School Board at the Vermont School Boards Association, the VSBA annual meeting, which is on October 23rd at 6 p.m. Is it, who is interested in that? You're interested in that?
I mean, yeah, VSBA members, board members. So. Anybody else want to do it?
I won't be in town.
Okay, and you'll be able to attend this year?
Yeah, I'll be able, so I can go to the business meeting the night before. It's the daytime. So I can go.
Okay, and would you, if we designated you, would you summarize what's being voted on? And send that out to the board, and then if the board wants to talk about it, we can talk about it at our October 8th meeting.
Yeah, but again, yeah, right, it's just like approving minutes, approving the treasury report. Yeah, things like that, yeah. So yes, I will do that.
Okay, and then maybe when we talk about agenda planning, we on the October 8th, if there's any updates about. If there's anything relevant, we should be talking about, we'll talk about it in October. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to designate Laura Williams as the South Burlington designate for the VSBA meeting. All right. So Emily moves, Michelle seconds. Is there any discussion?
Thank you.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. So move on to the next agenda item, designating school board member or administrator to vote on behalf of the SBSD at the Health Initiative and the Insurance Trust annual meeting. This is on October 23rd at 6 p.m. via Zoom.
Same day.
Wow, yes. So I have a suggestion here. Joe, are you available to do that?
Believe I am, and I think also in your folder, there might be something about being able to vote by proxy if somebody came to. The 23rd? Yeah.
23rd at 6 p.m.
Yes.
So I would,
I'd
you
be
know,
happy to.
if they allow us to send an administrator and if you could do it like similar to Laura, where you summarize for us in advance of the October 8th meeting, if there's anything that we should be thinking about, if there's anything that you think you need our advice on about how to vote, and then it can be discussed or be able to.
Be happy to do that. Give me an opportunity to learn more about both of those organizations.
Okay, well, I would entertain a motion to designate Joe Clark as our designee to vote at the Vermont Education Health Initiative and the Vermont School Boards Insurance Trust annual meeting on October 23rd at 6 p.m.
Second.
Okay, so Laura moves, Austin seconds, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Jim.
Joe, Laura,
Joe and Laura.
great. So we are now a little bit ahead of time. It's 6:17 and on our agenda, we have 6:30. So maybe let's just take a 3-minute break and we'll start 10 minutes early at 6:20. So we'll just take a quick break. I had a question. Do you guys, do the student?
That,
Yeah,
I think most of our stuff we can wait till next week to share.
okay.
Yeah. Thank you for checking.
All right, so we'll start back up here. So the first item for discussion is vice chair. This is something that the SBA says is possible. And whereas we cannot have co-chairs, we can have a vice chair. And so, I personally will be out for a few meetings later this year. I won't be here next week. I will be on Zoom for a couple meetings in November. And so I thought it would be a good idea to talk about, having a vice chair to run the meetings. I don't know.
I remember the conversation came up when we were reorganizing. We talked about a vice chair, especially since we're all new, and so it could be good to have support, and there's also 7 of us, so. Good, good people spare. I think it's a great idea. My opinion.
So do I.
I agree.
No objection. Great, well, I would, I think I can nominate somebody. The chair. Go for it,
Okay, well,
I mean,
or do you want to do it?
no, you
All
should,
right. I'd like to nominate Jen Lawrence to be vice chair.
so I would entertain a motion to,
Jen Lawrence.
oh, yeah,
That's why I was a little uncomfortable.
I'd be happy to do it.
Okay.
I'd be happy.
I like saying with conviction. I would like to nominate Jen Lawrence.
I second yours.
okay, so I would entertain a motion to nominate Jen, to name Jen Lawrence the vice chair of the South Burlington School Board. And so now somebody can make the motion.
I will move to nominate Jen as vice chair.
Second.
Section, is there any discussion?
This is where the public could discuss.
No, this is,
Yes, because we marked it for possible action,
Okay,
so,
so
I think,
anyone comment right now?
yes.
Okay.
Catch 'em.
Yeah, I guess, so, any public comment? All those in, oh, we have one, go for it.
Just a point of clarification, I wonder if.
wait, Jim, can you state your name, because there's some people can hear.
Hi, I'm Jean Marie Clark. I'm the Senior Director of Finance and Operations and a former board member. I just am curious if perhaps you should vote to agree to have that position in your. Before you nominate somebody for that position. To agree to have a vice chair as part of your complement of positions.
Sure,
That's my comment.
that advice,
Good point.
so shall we allow the motion to fail and start over? So I would entertain a motion to specify that there will be a vice chair of the South Burlington School Board.
I move to have a vice chair of the South Burlington School Board.
Do I have a second?
I second.
So Laura moves, Emily seconds, any discussion? All those in favor? The motion passes. So I would entertain a motion to name Jennifer Lawrence as the vice chair of the South Burlington School Board.
I move to make the meetings.
Second.
What about changing my mind?
So Laura
Oh, you.
moves and Dan seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay,
Thanks, Jen.
thanks, Jen.
Congratulations.
So the next item on our agenda is, budget. And so I have a few thoughts initially, and then I believe Joe may have some thoughts, and also Joe invited Jesse Baker, city manager of South Burlington, who can also go, help us just talk through, the idea. So, I just wanted to start by saying one of the wise things that Joe said a couple months ago at this point, maybe just a couple weeks ago, was it's important to talk about money when you're not asking for it. And so, I think that this board needs to do as much outreach as possible, following the Toussaint plan, to start to get community engagement around budget. And I also think that the board has to be very careful about how we approach the budget to make sure that we are not making the school district's job harder on the one hand, by getting into operational concerns, and on the other hand, making the budget harder to understand for taxpayers and voters. And so when we discuss this going forward, something I'm gonna be watching out for is when we get into real inside baseball about, financial letters and CLAs and all these things that can very rapidly confuse people, and frankly, also I think confuse us as a board. So with that, Joe, do you have any preliminary thoughts about budget?
Well, I mean, this is my first budget as a Vermont superintendent. I am learning a lot. I went to the conference last week and learned a lot, and Jean Marie is a great resource as well, as is the son. I'm glad that they are on board to help guide us through this first time. My understanding is that the board really, your role, as I understand it, is to determine what the overall budget is going to be, but it's the operations of me and my team to decide how that money will be spent. Of course, we'd keep you updated on all of those things, but I think when you talk about not the board not getting in the weeds too much, I think it's really about setting the level that we feel the community will be able to support, and then me and my team. And I also believe that principals need to have a lot of say in how they spend their money in their buildings. I think they know their buildings better than anybody. So I'm hopeful that the board will give me some guidance on, you know, what our overall budget will be, and we will be really pleased to go through and figure out how are we going to best serve our kids with the resources we've provided.
Great. And Jesse, could I ask you to step up to the microphone? So one of the things, and obviously we're now in a discussion period, so board, please feel free to ask questions to Joe, to Jesse, to Jean Marie. My first question for you, Jesse, is around the way that we talk about budgets in Vermont. And I was going through some of the city budget materials from last year, and I saw words like, you know, based on inflation, but at the same time maintaining operations. And it would be great if you could just give kind of a Vermont-based, you know, vocabulary for how we talk about budgets.
Sure. So just for the record, my name's Jessie Baker. I serve as your not your superintendent, right? As your city manager. And I would first like to say I'm so thankful to be here tonight and for the partnership that I've experienced with all of you. Thank you, Jesse. All of you, and especially the superintendent over the last 2 weeks. It's been a real breath of fresh air. We've already done a lot of work together, and I'm very thankful for that. I also want to start this with the caveat that a municipal budget and a school budget are wildly different in some really important ways in Vermont. Primarily, our tax rate formula is very simple. We take what our expenditure budget is, we subtract out the non-property tax revenues, and we set the property tax rate based on that expenditure number divided by the grand list. It's very straightforward, very easy to calculate. You all have the challenge of contending with a similar expense budget, but many more factors that are not controlled by you going into the revenue side of that equation. It creates a big challenge for you. And I have an understanding of that, but I do not at all suggest that I am an expert in that. From a goal setting process, what I think would be most helpful is to share how the South Burlington City Council and other city councils I've worked with in Vermont have handled at the board level or the council level, setting goals for your executive to go and meet as part of the budget process. So here in South Burlington, the city council at their September 2nd meeting approves a budget schedule for the process. At their meeting on September 15th, the staff presented our FY27 projections, which included our expenditure projections and our revenue projections. And then the council had a conversation about high-level policy goals that they would like us to meet as we, the leadership team of the city, the department heads of the city, put together the operations budget for the council to consider in December. So very specifically what they, the guidance they gave us on September 15th was that they want to continue our current operations level. They want to kind of have what's called a steady state or maintaining operations budget. They're not looking to add greatly to the budget or subtract greatly to the budget. They asked us to explore non-property tax revenues, which we have more ability to raise than you do on the education side. They have asked us to deliver them a budget that was at or under August inflation. So I think that's a point you just made. So August inflation for our region of the country was 3.3%. So they don't want to go over that considering the affordability goals of our community. They also asked us to look at a strategic use of our reserves and implementing any policy actions that they've taken that we have yet to implement. So on our side of Dorset Street, what this means is our expense budget, if we do nothing else, just to maintain our current level of staffing, our expense budget's gonna go up 6.5%. Taking into consideration baseline revenues of new grand list growth, that means a tax rate increase of 5.5%. And we are looking to 3.3%. It's the work the leadership team is doing. I just want to underline what Dr. Park said. In our systems and our policy and operation or policy elected officials and our implementers at the executive level, your role is really to set that high level policy guidance and let your executive bring you a set of recommendations that meets those policy goals. Happy to answer any questions.
And is it common, and I understand that it's very different municipal and school board budgeting. The reason I asked you this question is because I think that, you know, you're a leader in South Burlington, and so you know South Burlington pretty well. And is it common for the city council to ask you to do inflation year after year, or like, what is, or, you know, I've also heard the term level funding or, you know, 0%, like, what's been the history of what the city council has asked you to do?
So I'm in my 5th year. This will be my 4th budget bringing to the community. Over that period of time, they have asked us to meet inflation. And then if there was new policy initiatives we were implementing, consider that in addition to level funding or maintaining operations. So that is, we have hovered around that between 2% increase and 5% tax rate increase over those 4 years. And the higher numbers were the years we were adding staff to meet a specific policy decision the council had.
And so when a governing body tells you inflation, and in this case, it would be 3.3%. Does that doesn't mean that the tax rate goes up by 3.3%. That's separate.
So
Right.
that is a tax rate goal that the council has set. For us, on our side, that is what that is the guidance they've given, is bring us a tax rate not to exceed inflation. Thinking under the guise of, the council has set affordability goals. We want to be a community that's affordable to all of our residents. And if our residents are, their income's only increasing a certain amount and all of their other costs are increasing the same amount or a similar amount, we don't want to go over that average. So for us, it is a tax rate goal. That is much harder on your side of the equation because you don't know all of those inputs when you're setting your budget. So because you have a very different funding formula, you could think about using that as a benchmark on your expense budget, or using that as a benchmark on your expense budget minus entitlements, or using it as a benchmark in a different way as a policy decision.
I think it's gonna be very important to make it abundantly clear for people that they can see these are the variables. You know, this is what we know, and then these are the factors that can change. Because I think it is very difficult to get your head around. Now, but what you're saying makes sense, that your property tax, you don't want that to be outpacing inflation. If your property tax is going up, that would be causing red flags.
Well, that's just what the city may have told Jesse to do.
Right.
I don't think you're.
That's the
expressing
policy
opinion.
guidance the council has given us.
Okay, so, Joe, if we said to you, we're going to give you 3 different levels. One of them is like a 0%, like, so the exact same number that was on the ballot last year is gonna be on the ballot this year. And then another option would be that number on the ballot from last year, just multiplied by 103.3%, inflation. And then a third option would be, maintaining all the programs, so no additions, but also no cuts. Is that a way that the board should think about telling you what to do? And there's also a question if you want to call on Jean Marie too.
I think Jean Marie might be very helpful in this. I think that it's my first time going through this. I think that if we had those numbers, what I would be able to tell the board is what that means in terms of personnel, right? So we will have an average cost for a professional staff member, for a classified staff member, et cetera. So I'll be able to tell you how many cuts we might need to make, but I would not be able to tell you what those would be, nor do I think that's something that you really need to be concerned about, right? But if you get a sense of, hey, this budget means we're cutting nobody, or this budget means we're going to cut 50 employees, you would start to get a sense of how that might impact programming in the district. So that's a long way of saying, yeah, it'd be helpful for my first time through to get some different looks at what the options might be.
Yeah, any thoughts about that?
I mean, I think that Joe answered you the same way that I would, which is we just need some guidance from you in the direction that you'd like us to go in, and pulling together a couple different, budget scenarios is definitely something that we could do. I talked with the team about that today, and so there's some when I'm working with my friends that are from the accounting world, and I say to them, can you help me come up with a number that's more of an art than a science? They really struggle with that, because they really want to come in with an exact figure. And I think at this point in time, we just need like a ballpark number of like, if we move to maintain everything and not make any cuts, like that would be about a 7% increase, and that would look like approximately this. I'm comfortable doing that. They struggle with that a little bit. So there's some things that they're working on. One of the things right now that they've been working really hard on is the salary schedule as those contracts are being finalized. So once they've got those salary schedules settled and agreed upon, that gives them really accurate, much more accurate numbers as we look to forecast the budget. One of the things that one of the staff members said to me today is like, really what we could do is look at FY25, the last finished year, and broadcast that out a couple of years. And that's what they've done in other districts. So giving them a little bit of time to come up with those numbers for you, I think would be helpful. But yeah, they're comfortable doing that. They just need some direction. And if you said, could you come up with 10 scenarios? That would be a little bit of a big ask, but if you come up with 2 or 3, it's definitely reasonable.
Okay, and then to add another complication to ask if it's reasonable. So this is something that Jesse mentioned, entitlement, discretionary. So would it be too complicated for the board to say to you, separate the budget into what the school board has control over and what the school board doesn't have control over? And grow the discretionary part by those 3 numbers, and then maybe, the entire, and treat that as separate from the entitlement spending. Does that make sense?
I think it's potentially possible. The entitlement spending, as you have it listed, is outside of our control, and it's given to us. But we know right now approximately what the healthcare increase will be. And I was kind of spitballing that with the team today. Right now, the SBA is we're looking at 13.7 is what they think it's gonna come in at, which is 2% less than last year. So my team was like, such a giant number. And I said, yes, but it's 2% less than last year.
And at a $73 million budget, 2% less of healthcare costs is the significant difference. So I think that we could do that. I just really wanna put some emphasis on the fact that entitlement spending, you can't say to me, keep that at this percentage.
Right. I guess the
I-
reason that I would ask for, because again, this is a matter of communicating what we're doing to the community.
Yeah,
And so like, something that Jesse mentioned was this idea of, increasing the discretionary part by the inflation number. And if we did that, what we would be saying is that like, however much the entitlement part grows, maybe it grows by 10%,
right,
that's out of our control.
right,
And we don't wanna, and if we were to combine the two and say, grow the overall budget by X. But we didn't separate them into discretionary and entitlement, what we would end up doing is dramatically cutting discretionary because the.
right. Yeah,
Because the entitlement will take up all of the
Right,
increase
yeah.
and more.
yep, agreed. Because I'm so new to playing this game, I don't know, at what moment in time we're able to forecast what special ed numbers look like. We may be able to, look back in history to say, well, these, typically go up 3% or 10% every year to be able to give us a little bit of guidance there. But yeah, as a person who used to sit in your seats, it does feel like there's so much that we are required to pay for that is just outside of our control that goes up. And we can't help that. And it impacts all the other things that we do want to have control over. So I totally feel for you. And we could work through trying to help you make as best of an educated guess as possible.
And there's relationships between entitlement spending and discretionary spending, right? What healthcare costs. We can't control, but we can control how many people qualify for benefits, right? That's based on what your staffing is. So, I think that makes it. It adds a wrinkle to this about, well, we have to spend this on healthcare, not if we reduce staff, and I'm not suggesting we reduce staff, right? Special education, we're required to meet the needs of an IEP. It would take 1 or 2 students with significant needs to move to the district that might blow the budget out of the water. We rightfully so educate every student that lives in the district, and some have more significant needs than others that can be quite expensive. So there's a lot of, even within the entitlement, there's a lot of variability that we have, perhaps that the city doesn't.
So I have a question. When can you nail down those costs for like special ed? At what point in this formula can we nail those costs down so we know what it is? I don't have the answer for that. I don't know if you know that. I don't know that we can, honestly.
I think that you can nail it down until
Yeah, I
think
kids
you can.
show up on day 1 next year.
So
No, until
really-
next September.
So you just put a placeholder in and say, based on previous years, this is approximately what it would be. Popular, what the current student
Okay.
population
15% of our kids are on IEPs, and this is the rate of the different disabilities they have, and this is what it typically costs. And then you plan
Okay.
for whatever services you have that you outsource, OT or PT or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
How much of those?
And so something that Joe just said, I wanna ask Jesse if you had any thoughts about, the fact that entitlement spending is based on staffing levels, which are themselves discretionary up to the max class size limits. But like, has the city council ever asked you to separate discretionary and entitlement in that way? And if so, how have you resolved that?
They have not asked us to separate like that because it's we don't have entitlements the way you do. If I can step back for a minute, I think one of the big differences in. Actually think anyone was on the council, we had a conversation previously. There's a governance difference in the school board and the council. The school board and the school district is required to do a lot more of the service delivery by statute than the city is. The only things the city is actually statutorily required to do is maintain roads, run elections, and maintain property records and vital records. Everything else is policy of the council, the community has asked them to do. So our entitlements don't exist in the same way, and we don't receive a healthcare number from an outside source. So we have much more ability to change our plans, to change our stop loss insurance, to renegotiate with providers. So the goals they set are universal for the whole expenditure budget and revenue budget, not just a certain part, because it's much more discretionary at the value.
Right, because at the school district, there's a Vermont Health Commissioners Board that sets what insurance and healthcare must be offered to all employees, and currently that is set at the state level as it's a gold family plan. And that the school district must pay 80% of the gold family plan for all district employees. So that's an example of something you don't have. You don't have the health commissioners telling you this is what the plan is,
Exactly.
and the premiums. And then the
Exactly.
80%
So, for example, this fiscal year, we are increasing the amount our employees are paying towards their healthcare premium. We have the ability to do that, negotiated through our collective bargaining agreements. We don't have the same.
So we only have control about, I don't know, maybe 25% of the budget. So, I mean, so can we, yeah, so it's just not that much to control. So like, what's it, at 3 to 4 scenarios, would you say? Like,
Yeah, I mean, you tell me what you're looking for and then we'll have the team work that up for you. I feel like Seamus in the board, I think it was you potentially, that someone put in the board agenda 3 different scenarios. And so if that's what you'd like us to work towards, then you can do that.
Yeah.
I did also have, while Jesse's sitting here with me, I was thinking, Seamus, one thing that you might be asking Jesse is, as a taxpayer, you get one bill, right? That is our budget and your budget, and so which then equals one bill. So like, I think I would wanna know from a taxpayer's perspective, what you think will your budget increase, or like, what would your percentage look like and how it impacts what ours, if yours is gonna go up by 5 and ours stay at 4, then the impact is 9%, like. Is
So-
it way too early to ask that question?
So it doesn't actually aggregate like that.
Okay.
Because, of a total, so this is
Yeah,
going down a different road
Yeah.
that we can, so of a total South Burlington homeowners budget, the city portion of that budget is 20, or the city portion of that tax bill is about 25%. And the school portion of that tax bill is about 75%.
gotcha.
So it doesn't aggregate 4 plus 5.
Yeah,
We could figure out kind of the curve of
Yeah.
that, if our budget comes in at 3.3% or lower for that 25%.
Yeah.
And you come in at 3.3, well, if we came in at the same, that's what it would be.
Yeah.
Overall, but, it's not a 50-50.
Yeah.
We're 25.
But just how that-
50%.
how that overall impacts, like how together.
So we could look at that historically.
So Jesse, so on that note, if we do not have our budget until later, how does that impact you? Because if that's say 75% and if our number comes in much higher, I mean, I guess when do you nail down your budget?
So our elected bodies are separate. So the city council
Right.
sets the tax rate goal just for the municipal budget. So when I say they've set a goal at 3.3% or lower, that's just on the municipal
gotcha.
tax rate
Gotcha.
portion of that number.
Okay.
And that is a separate ballot item on the town meeting day ballot.
Yep.
You can approve the city budget and not the school budget in reverse. And so it's, unless the 2 elected bodies come together and discuss, it's really done not together.
Separate,
So
got it.
Jesse, would you agree, like, well, this budget's much more complicated, right? Isn't that what you were saying?
The school budget?
Yes. So I think like, yeah,
Much more complicated from an impact on the property tax. payer.
exactly.
I think it's
And-
more complicated on the fund side for the municipal.
Yeah,
budget. That's-
And there's just a lot of variables that the city doesn't have to deal with. I mean, this is education. It is not a business. Otherwise, nobody would run a business this way. But we like 80%, 85% is salary. And, you know, I mean, really, we control very, very little of it. So frankly, I just, maybe if we just choose like 3 to 4 scenarios and then take a look at what that looks like. Keeping in mind, it's going to change because the state does weird things in January and it just, it's not a very streamlined process. Plus there's, negotiations going on. So I think everybody's just gotta stay open and understand that it's not like doing I love hearing Jessica explain the city budget. I love it because it's like, oh, it's so clear. Oh, that's not what we're dealing with. So, but yeah, but thank you.
So I prepared this also, this is not official school district material, so nobody should take a screenshot of this and put it in the paper. This is just me reading all of the different sources of information that are available, looking at growth rates over time. Something that I thought was pretty interesting is that since 2019, the school district budget has grown at about inflation. Wages have also grown at about inflation. I also put state average wages. This is from a official government survey called OEWS that looks at like elementary, post-secondary, and middle school teachers across the state of Vermont. And I also went back to old enrollment reports and tried to get the best enrollment numbers that I could. I think that obviously the most shocking thing on here is the red line, which is the state mandated healthcare. This is the Vermont Health Commissioner's approved rates, of which we pay 80%. And my understanding, although don't quote me on this, is that the health commissioners actually have been taken to arbitration and have lost in arbitration. So I just wanted to put this on screen as an informative thing about, you know, where the budget is, where inflation is, where wages are, where enrollment is, where healthcare is at.
What's possible to get. And the other thing is that healthcare is going to remain in effect through the end of 2028. So.
Seamus, I'd also just share with you that when Joe and I were away at the Maxwell meeting last week, VHI presented to us as we were talking through the healthcare costs, and they said that for the cost for a family plan in fiscal year 18 was, or maybe it was fiscal year 19, it was $18,000 for a family plan. Current year, $40,000. That like those numbers stuck with me, and that's like, I can't speak to exactly what you have on your graph, but it has grown exponentially. So yeah, again, this is something that nobody sitting here gets to make a decision about.
Yeah.
We just have to deal with it.
So I'm wondering if maybe we start just discussing what January should, because we can't, I mean, that's just been extended to 2028.
Yeah.
So there's nothing anybody can do. I mean, things are happening at a state level, Green Mountain Care Board, they are trying to reduce costs and things like that. But again, that has nothing to do with us to.
Yeah, right. So I would propose that we think about this maybe in 2 phases. First, I want to propose the idea of splitting of asking the central office to come up with a report for us that splits discretionary and entitlement. And I think we should decide before we talk about the options, is that a good idea that will take them more time to split things up by discretionary and entitlement? But I think the benefit of it is that we can then, to a certain extent, go to the voters and say, listen, you're really voting about 30% of the budget, 70% of the budget has been set by you, by the state government.
Right.
So how do people feel? Is that too much of a burden to put on the staff? Or is it worth the additional burden of calculating?
I would ask maybe a different question as well. I'd love your response. You're breaking out, discretionary versus non. The main purpose of that, as I understand it, is to get to a point of what are the things we can control versus what are the things we cannot control, right? But we already know to some extent that things outside of our control are going to be increasing at X%, or we have some guesses. So my question would be, or would it be as effective, and you tell us what would be easier or preferred for you and the team, to say, if we change nothing else with the budget, except for the few things we know right now, right, which is the Act 27 expired credit and some rough estimate for insurance costs, right? We put in the few things we know now, how much higher does the budget go? And that's a starting point, right?
Well, my response to that is there's two, first of all, part of the reason to do discretionary versus entitlement is so that when we inform the public about the budget, we can differentiate that and we can say, look, you know, we're not asking you to, you know, the budget's going up by X%, but that X% is not our choice. Only half of that X% is our choice. So it's a messaging, it's ensuring that we have that ability to message. That's number one. And then number two, I don't think that the board should ask for. I don't think the board should like ask for, what do we think the number is gonna be? I think the board is instead supposed to say, here's what the number will be, or here's some, and then you guys, you know, here's 3 boxes, a small box, and a medium box, and a big box. What fits in each one of those boxes? I don't think that I think we would get in an iterative loop where we would have to keep revising and having more meetings if we kept saying, well, what if we took this out, and then that's a new number, and we say, well, we're not happy with that. So I think we have to set proactively a number as opposed to having them tell us what the number is.
I don't think we can give an exact number. I think like some of these scenarios have to be played out, and I know like what Tim would have, a spreadsheet, you could like. You know, he would take out and add things to see what it would do to the number. I don't know if we can give an exact number. Without, I mean, I don't think that's how.
So I have been playing with some scenarios, and I certainly am not the expert that you are, or that Tim was on this. But the reason behind my question is that there are already some things that appear to be inevitable in this budget. That if we just keep everything else the same, could result in anywhere, recognizing that there are a lot of unknowns. Result in anywhere from a 6 to a 12% budget hike, and that's if we just keep other things the same and the momentum of things coming our way hit the budget. So I'm asking us to maybe recognize that reality, and the insurance graph certainly illustrates, right? There's a runaway cost that we did not elect for, that we are on the hook for. We might not know the exact number, but if we know and appreciate that a number of that magnitude is coming, we can start with a budget that will anticipate that and will end in a place that the community will support. I don't want us to, I don't think it would be productive for us to give you a number that we could play through with some reasonable assumptions and see ending up at a 12% budget hike, because the community will support that. So if we work backwards from getting to a budget that we expect the community to support, I think we should start with that number in mind, with the best of our ability today, which probably means a more modest starting. That's what I would encourage us to do, but.
Or multiple starting points, right?
Sure, yeah, but I would encourage us to start from modest multiple starting points, because there are things coming in with some simple modeling that could easily push us into double-digit budget territory without us even, you know, trying to do anything heroic, right? Just with momentum. So,
Michelle, did you want to?
Yeah, a couple of things. I agree. I think that we need to start modest because of those things that aren't in our control, that have the potential to really bring that number up, no matter what. But specifically on the discretionary versus entitlement, I do think that it's making a false distinction that actually complicates it in my mind. And to the point that Joe was making, we do have leverage over healthcare because we have leverage over the number of people that are receiving healthcare. We have leverage over max class size. We can set a policy. Obviously, that has some natural limits and things that we need to consider from an educational perspective that we would rely on our experts to tell us about. But I don't see that the green box and the red box are mutually exclusive. They're overlapping. Therefore, my sense is that, and you can all tell me, that it actually makes your job harder and it makes it a little less clear to the community. If we give you, well, we're going to give you a number, but it only applies to discretionary. Then you're coming back, well, what do you mean by discretionary? Can I Can I give you a scenario that has cuts? Do I have to give you a scenario that doesn't have cuts? So I'm not in favor of this as it is, like maybe if it's special ed, because that is fixed, there's nothing that anybody can do about that. The other things
Oh, that's.
are
that's a
technically
good-
discretionary.
Yeah, if you said that if we separated special ed and everything else. Would there be anything else besides special ed that's totally obligatory and mandated that we can't control through head count?
Lights, buildings.
Yeah, it's something like 25% that we have control over. I don't know.
Well, but you say 25%, but I mean, we do have control over head count. So that's.
So you want class
Or
sizes of
facilities,
35 or like what are we
And,
talking about?
right,
Size.
Okay, so class sizes have already gotten bigger. And you've got, you know, like, what are they capped at 25? And you have a lot more need now. So I'd be very careful about that. Can we ask for? I don't know, I would like to see scenarios.
well, sure, right, so I think my first ask here was to just have the board decide whether we would like to ask for a differentiation between discretionary and entitlement. Because that applies to all the scenarios equally. I think that what Michelle said is a really good idea. Let's only think about the special ed. Because that is entirely dependent on who moves into our district and is not completely out of our control. And so we basically say, as you go into this scenario planning, if you would possibly keep separate the special ed portion and everything else.
Yeah, and to that point, if you're looking for projections, I did just happen to notice yesterday that the AOE just put out a report to the legislature that has some really nice trend information in there. I can send you the link.
Great.
I found it really useful to think about what we can expect in terms of growth in IEPs. They have been growing and pretty at a higher rate in Vermont than pretty much anywhere else. The other thing I wanted to suggest, and this came from a community member, and I think it's a really good idea for us to consider, which is the rate of Social Security increase. I'm not even sure that one's on. So in terms of a number for us to consider to give to the district to play out in terms of a budget. And the rationale behind that is we have inflation, but when we look at the average person, we don't get inflation, right? We get something less than that typically, and the Social Security is running, I think it's projected right now, 2.7 to 2.8. The real number is gonna come out middle of October, so there's
So it's less than inflation.
it's less than inflation because that's more realistic. And it's not that, you know, I get my 1.5% raise and that goes all to taxes, but it
Okay.
sets a benchmark of a reasonable expectation about what real people are realizing in their.
So let's talk about that in the next question that I have, which is like, what are the three scenarios for the,
Okay,
you know, how many, so first question is the board broadly okay with the concept of asking the staff to separate special ed from everything else as they go through these different things and treating that as entitlement and everything else as discretionary?
I don't understand that.
I don't.
And I have a little bit of a
Comfortable with the word entitlement too, about
Because-
special education, because that is federal law. I'm.
Ask, I mean, I'd be curious to hear, what would be some recommendations that maybe you might suggest for how we could best figure out how to approach this?
Well, to answer that I guess my first comment is I'm just really concerned about us saying, hello world, here's exactly how much we spend on just this one population of
Yes,
students.
very
That feels
uncomfortable.
very
Yes, yes.
unkind.
But that's
So-
also public information.
Well, well, what about like saying, all right, I'm agree with Jen. I mean, like, how about you game out like a 6% increase and then people can take a look at what goes into special education.
Well, I guess the reason, can I explain that? So basically what I'm saying is that we could forget about this whole concept of separating discretionary and entitlement. And then in the next section where we say, have a scenario for 0%, have a scenario for social security, have a scenario for inflation, have a scenario for, no cuts. If we don't separate discretionary and those things, then on the like inflation one or the social security one, then what's gonna happen is that you're going to increase the budget, the overall budget by 2.5% or 2.7%, like you were just saying, Michelle. But then what happens is that the healthcare or the special ed costs, I'm sorry, go up by so much that actually it's a dramatic cut. And so by saying 2.5% inflation, it's actually a dramatic cut.
Right, no, I mean, that's what's going to happen, that's the reality of this right now.
So what we could do in terms of selling, in terms of informing the community about how this budget works, is we could also say, well, separate out the special ed money and grow whatever is left by 2.5%, or grow whatever is left by inflation. And then that would ensure that in some, you might argue that that is more fair for the rest of the budget, because the special ed money we can't control.
Seamus,
Right, like.
if the goal is to communicate to the community, which I think we should, and I respect what I'm hearing as the goal. Is, here's what we have control over, and here's what we do not have control over. I think there's a way to do that without calling out entitlement versus discretionary or special education for nothing.
Okay.
And we are responsible for the whole budget ultimately, right? The total number. So I would hate to give the impression that we're really only focusing on a small portion. And the way that hopefully we could communicate that with the community, say, here's the number, here were the increases that were obligated to us, right? And this was how much we had to pay no matter what. That was our starting point. And then therefore, after that point, we either added a little on top, or we had to cut in these other areas. And we can communicate that total number that we were like, our entitlement number, but I'm uncomfortable breaking out the social security number personally. But if the goal is to show the community, which I think is what you're trying to get at, here's the expenses that were foisted on us, right? That we were starting with, and here's the expenses we chose. I think we can do that in the aggregate at the end.
Well, and I'm ready to move on from this, because it doesn't seem like there's broad support for the idea of using it. My only concern is that now we're gonna move into the next part, which I'd like to ask, which is like, what are the three options that we wanna ask for? 0%, inflation, no cuts, for example. If we have just decided that we're not gonna include, if we've just decided that in that inflation number, that 3.4%, 3.3% must include that special education money, what we might be doing is kind of making more dramatic cuts than we realize and calling it inflation. Like we may be like, if basically in the bigger picture, if the community understood how much special education is costing us, they might be more understanding of us growing the rest of the budget by inflation. So it's a smaller budget, and it's harder to justify, in my opinion, if we don't separate those things out.
Conceptually, until they get their real estate bill and it's up 11%. I mean, they can support that in concept, but when it actually comes down to what that means for real estate taxes, the support will be different.
Right, I think like what you're saying is like, Seamus, in your, what you're really trying to do is be as transparent as possible and really like make it understandable, but it could end up being more confusing in the end. That's what you're saying?
Right, and like, I'm sure every community member would want to support like really like generous and well-funded special education programs. We all do. But then when it actually gets down to what does that mean for the tax bill after 2 years of really high tax bill increases already? If we're like, well, here's what it means, right? In order to do that at the level we want, or even to increase.
It's the law.
Even to increase discretionary by inflation while also absorbing all these other costs, that ends up meaning your tax bill is going up 11%. So if we have these legally obligated tax, or increase that we have to realize in the budget, it's going to necessitate cuts elsewhere. And I think we need to prepare for that.
Okay, and just imagine that like let's say that there's a perfect number, which there isn't, but let's say that the perfect number is like a 7% increase. Right? So there's two ways to explain that number. One way is to explain it by saying, well, what we did is we treated this special ed separately, and we just said, apply inflation to the rest. And the other way of saying it is this combined method, where we said, well, if you put everything together, we think that the budget should grow by about 7%. And people immediate, I mean, my reaction to that would be, wait a minute, why aren't you just growing the budget by inflation?
So,
And so what we end up doing is we end up making it much harder to pass a budget that, in my opinion, much harder. That is fair for the schools, given the burden being placed by outside parties.
So
But
we
that's
only-
not a concern?
No, I don't think it's fair for the schools. I just also think it's gonna be hard to get the community to support what we want to be fair to the schools and what would be fair to the schools. It's a junky situation.
I was just gonna say, we have 30 minutes, we have 5 more items on this, and I'm just wondering if Superintendent Joe, if you have some thoughts on this.
I have a few thoughts. I would like to see 3 scenarios. I think, these are the scenarios I'd like to see. I'd like to see a 0%, right? So we are spending exactly what we did this year. And then we will be able to tell you, because we know expenses are going to go up, how is this going to impact our staffing levels? Therefore, how is it going to impact our program? I would like to see a no cuts. We're gonna have the exact same staffing as we have this year, next year. And that means our budget is going to go up X%. And then I want something right in the middle. So we figure out this is what 0 is, this is what no cuts is. And now what's right in the middle? So then we can see, okay, that means it's going to go up X% and also have this number of cuts. And I think if we have those 3 things first, then we can say, okay, which one's closest to what we want? And now let's nudge it whichever way.
Yeah,
Okay,
scale.
we don't want to cut this bad, but we don't want to go all the way up this high to the increase. So let's have a better idea. And I think I like the idea of the, I like the idea after we know what the budget's going to be, of showing the community how much of this is beyond our control and how much is in our control.
Which is what we do every year.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like the terminology of entitlement or special ed, but I think it's fair to say, listen, we're asking you, when it's all said and done, we're asking you for a budget that's going to require us to make a cut of about 5% of our staff. It means it's going to increase your taxes, 7%. And this is how much is beyond our control because healthcare is going up and this is going up. And this is how much that, we are keeping because we value programs for kids.
Right.
That to me, I think, again, and I've never been through this, so I'm probably being way too simplistic about this, but I think those are the numbers I'd like to see.
But
That doable for your?
Yeah, that feels like the right direction to go in, and I think what you're trying to get to, Seamus, is the narrative that you wanna share with the community. To be able to say, it's a 7% increase, but of the 7%, 5% of it was these fixed costs, if you will, of things that we don't have
and
control
what's left
over.
over is.
Yeah, and we can, I'm for sure, we can get to that for you when we get to the other side of this, right? That you'll be able to have all that information, and then I also think that you'll be able to say, of the discretionary that we were able to spend, here are the things that we preserve, here are our priorities and our goals, the things that we preserved, and here are the things that we had to cut. For whatever reason those are, right? So I think the road you're going down is exactly the right one, it just is a little cart before the horse, so I think. I would agree with what Joe's suggestions are, and I think that I can have our team work through that.
But the one in the middle is not inflation, it's just
No.
something in the middle, and that's what I'm, like, as a taxpayer, if I just, again, clear my mind of all the details that I know about this, and. I'm like, why should this budget grow by more than inflation?
Well, I don't think that middle budget is what we end up with. I think that's what we use as our next. What the board uses as the next set of discussions, right? So I haven't heard that this board is ready to say, we're going to go 0% and you're gonna have to make massive cuts. Nor do I hear the board saying, we're not gonna cut anything. I hear us saying it's gonna be somewhere in the middle, so I'd like to get a sense of what the middle is, because it's gonna be closer to the middle than either of these two ends.
But even
which side of,
even if it was. Like, let's say the middle of that is 6%, but 6% is not inflation, so again, you have to clear out your mind of anything. That you know about education, because 80% of the people that vote, 80% of the voters are not education people. Why should they support more than inflation?
If we're if you're trying to reverse engineer into a budget that matches inflation, like the city councils, which I totally appreciate and understand that narrative, we are asking for aggressive cuts right now. I mean, that is what that will necessitate, and that's the point I'm trying to make. Is
But if it's every year, it's above inflation. I mean, it's the sustainability thing. How could you ever have a sustainable budget? If you do anything other than, you know, mostly inflation and sometimes some jumps.
That's why I'm asking us to start very conservative, because there are things in the budget well above inflation that will push the budget naturally at or even above inflation on their own merit. And so if you're trying to reverse engineer from a budget, which will get passed from the community, which I think is a smart way to approach it, and want to land somewhere around inflation, we are asking for cuts. That is what that will mean, because there are things, right? There are things that going into the budget that will already be
Yeah,
well in excess
it's
of
gonna
order
be
to fund,
pretty
which have to cut elsewhere.
So why don't we set that? Why don't we set the middle?
Exactly, exactly. Simply that means we need to start.
Why don't we do
Yeah, the inflation, zero, the no cuts, the middle, and inflation.
Okay,
Right.
And then we can have, then we'll have discussions about which way they want to go.
And,
Do we know that 6 to 7% is level spending, or is that?
No, I think
They're
that's.
gonna know, yeah.
Because that's kind of established.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's, yeah, and I think it'll be
and,
much
the other-
above that, but I think that's
Yeah.
important to know.
and don't forget, we are gonna be redistricting. So,
was
I mean,
just gonna
really,
say
you've gotta
that,
keep
yeah.
this in mind, and so I would like to call for the orders of the day and continue on and keep you posted for scenarios.
so those four, just to clarify, are the school board is asking the staff to produce proposed budgets at the 0% increase, inflation, and no cuts, and also a fourth option, which is in between the first and the third, in between 0 and no cuts. So that's one. Cool.
Did you get all that, Jimmy?
Give me your last one more time.
So you're gonna have a zero? Want me to-
The 50%,
zero,
okay, I
and
got it.
cuts.
It's not like I made your face.
So for the taxpayers who are listening, it's 0% change, it's inflation, it's no cuts, which is, we're estimating above 7 or 8%. And also a one that is right smack in the middle between 0% and the no cuts, which is probably higher than inflation. Yes. Great. Do you need anything else from us? Just so, we don't want to be a blocker on your work.
No, thank
Do
you.
you want a
I-
fifth scenario or?
Said we can't go to 10.
I think that, in conversations with my team, other districts have done, other boards have done the same thing, and at the end of the day, they got to a place where they're like, okay, enough with the high end and the low end, like, can we let's always just shoot for something in the middle, because that's kind of where we always end up, instead of going through this, but I think it's important work for us to do. I think that, you know, my ask of you is for you to begin to think about, no matter how this plays out, there's going to be losers. There's going to be cuts inevitably. So I think it's important for you to all think about, what are the priorities? What are the things that are important to us? What are the things that we know that we want to preserve? And that'll be work that, you know, we'll do with Joe and the team, but
Okay.
it's tough stuff.
And I want to give the board members a chance to make any final statements about, because this is the most important thing that we do here. My personal statement about this would be that I think the burden of proof is gonna lie on any budget that is above inflation. I think that is that's where the line is for a lot of taxpayers and voters, and so it's important to justify it if it's more than inflation. It's really tough.
Right, because even then, when the CLA comes in, what if it comes in unfavorable? It's gonna be higher.
It will.
Yeah, the CLA is probably going to,
As we think
it's
it's
already
gonna be-
trending above
This is what
inflation
I mean, like,
anyway, so
there's-
no matter what. No matter what, if we're trying to hit
What?
inflation, there's a lot of
Yeah,
cuts
there's-
because of the CLA is outside of our control. We're losing the Act 127 credit. I mean, there's like simply matching inflation means cuts.
There's gonna be unhappy people,
Right, where,
you know, there's gonna be
That's part
a
of it.
lot of unhappy taxpayers. It's gonna be a lot of unhappy people in the district because of cuts or everything. It's inevitable.
Does anybody else, any other board members have any statements on the budget?
How
They'd
long-
like them,
How
so,
long do you think it will take?
I'm taking vacation next week, so it's not gonna be next week. And our audit is coming up this month, so, and then the other piece, sooner than I'm hoping it's gonna be as soon as possible. But I just wanna remind you of the work of the team, which is selling that salary schedule that came out after negotiations, so they've gotta get that work done. And then getting ready for the audit, that's, begins on October 17th,
Is
so.
that a problem, the audit strike hitting right now? Like, in a sense of like, I mean, you probably can't reschedule it, but that
Yeah,
seems
it-
problematic.
So
No,
maybe
the
in a
audit-
month or so? Yeah, okay, yeah, as soon as we
January
possibly can, yeah.
Yeah, we have.
So it
So
would be
you
nice
were
to have
okay.
that,
Okay.
yeah, November, we can talk through it and go on. Okay, I say. Let's
So
go.
I think we need to,
Thank you,
Can we
James.
just look at the staff numbers and preferably trend?
I'm sorry.
So the number of district employees,
Yes,
preferably broken out by targeting.
Do we
units
wanna request
and-
that, given how much workload they just said that they have? Or
One of
can we,
the
what, can we wait for that till November
yeah,
or
I
December?
feel like it's context for what we're talking about.
I think it's probably readily available to
Yeah.
us.
Okay.
yeah, and it's
So-
work that's already being done. One of the pieces of the Sasan budget work that we're working on, number one is staff verification. Who's in your building, you know, and what role are they in? So they're doing, my office is doing some of that. They just started that work. They've got that information back from, like, here's who we think is in your building. You need to verify that for us. So they've just got that information back from the principals.
Might not be tomorrow, but yeah, that shouldn't be too long.
Yeah.
to get
No, I'm thinking just as context for our future, our next round of discussion.
We wouldn't necessarily, as a board, talk anymore about the budget until we hear again from you in November.
the scenarios.
Okay, all right. Is there any other comments from the board? Hey, keeping in mind that we won't talk about this again probably until November.
Just thank you, Joe, for your opinions and thank you for starting the process. And it's obviously messy parts.
Thanks for your patience.
Thank you for coming, Jesse.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
Great. All right, the next item on our agenda is policy monitoring. And the reason that this is on the agenda is both that the schedule of monitoring reports might bear updating. And also, Joe asked me to clarify for the staff what the expectations about the monitoring reports are. So, I'll just lay out a proposal and we can use it as a starting point for the discussion. I might suggest that we assign a board member to to just check over and see how we're doing on the monitoring schedule and work with Joe on proposing a set of dates. And similarly, I might propose that we assign a board member to talk through the requirements for each one of the monitoring reports with staff. And then kind of report back to the board about any additional things that we might ask. You know, for example, on the equity monitoring report, we wanted longitudinal data. You know, like we wanted to see data from this year and last year. So policy monitoring for there for discussion.
well, we have a schedule. Which we are not following,
Which is why it's on the agenda.
which is, we should be following it. So for example, like 2.9 that we're talking about tonight is not, as I don't remember, that's February. And we probably need an audit of this, for sure. I don't know if that, but, yeah, so, yeah, I mean, one of us could sit down with Joe and take a
Well,
look
this, I
at
mean,
this.
the reason I asked Seamus about this, and the reason I asked is there's a lot of angst among my administrative team. There's a lot of new folks, there's a lot, we're down a member or two.
Yeah,
And the board's new. And so, we're not opposed to monitoring, so we want to do them, but we would like to at least take a breather to let us work with each other and then maybe start on a new cycle with, maybe January or whatever. And Monica is going to continue doing hers. We know that hers is mostly done and she's adding the longitudinal data, so we'll be able to bring that one. But the other ones, I respectfully ask that if we could just delay those a little bit so we can get our feet wet. I would really I would be grateful for that.
I would recommend, and I don't know how this would play out, but I almost feel like this would be a great opportunity to bring the VSBA in to do an audit, perhaps. As you know, you're doing your thing, that we can have some kind of gauge of where we are with what's been done in the past. And just to be able to see that, because as part of continuous improvement, looking at, hey, where are some deficiencies and how can we tighten this up? I would like that. I think it'd be very helpful.
So would you want to contact the VSBA where I could do it and I'll send?
So, right, I might make a proposal. What if, Laura, you, or Jen contacted the VSBA, got information about the costs of an audit?
Right.
And then my suggestion, Michelle, I know that one of your interests getting on the board was monitoring reports. I would suggest maybe the board delegate to Michelle to meet with Joe, go over the monitoring schedule, go over like what kind of quality things we want on monitoring, and then kind of report back to the board for our action. For example, I think that we probably have to take action to set a new calendar, but maybe you and Joe could figure out. So that'd be my proposal, is that Michelle and Joe would figure out what the schedule would be.
I had to find out what, like, would you, like, work with somebody from the VSBA who would work with you, Michelle.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay,
Could also be part of the board training that we're talking about. Would that be a good discussion to have, so that we're not?
yeah, I mean, why not?
Well, I have a question about the monitoring reports, and Austin brought this up when we were trying to do our last report. Since it was his first one, and it's not, we hadn't done very many of them as most of us anyway, because we're new to the board, and are they the same for every school district? Like, did we write those policies ourselves, or does every school district follow the same? Do you know this answer to this question?
I do, but I hesitate to answer because I'm not the expert, I'm just knowledgeable.
Okay.
Resident.
I can take,
Okay.
and then Michelle can add on
Yeah.
there. So most of the policies that we've adopted come from Vermont School Board model policies, almost verbatim. And there are some like shifts, but the equity one, for example, is almost verbatim from the state.
Yeah, and the policy governance model and the policies themselves, when I look across the US, I see also almost verbatim.
Yes, it's.
And like
Like,
you would
it's,
have
you know,
it's been, it'll be vetted, right? And so. you would have
Exactly,
to
they're
really vet that.
proven, and there's a ton of resources out there on how to do good monitoring. It's not a bag of words, it's not words, it has purpose.
Right,
Yeah.
and I'd be curious if there'd be a way to translate all of that to something that's more
It is.
understandable to us and to
Yes,
the community,
like,
right?
And less burdensome of the district.
Mhm.
It's, it's,
So,
so the whole idea is so that the board and the community know how the district is doing. It's not punitive, it's formative, right? Like it is a process by which we understand each other and, do our duty.
Yeah, and I
as
just
a
think
board.
it's a good idea, just because we've been doing this the same way for so many years, doesn't mean we have to keep doing it that way. If it's not really, I don't know if the community feels like they're getting any kind of real information out of it, or if the
Right.
board feels like we're at the end of it, understanding what we heard. So I would love the idea of
Mhm.
going over those policies again.
So I'll talk about the audit and then I'll connect that person.
That'd be great.
To review.
We welcome accountability. We welcome accountability.
Okay.
But we just need a breather.
That's fine.
This would be a great opportunity. I feel like, let's get some guidance and clarity on where the gaps are. And then I think one of the outcomes from this would be some kind of matrix that we can show that is available on our website.
Mhm.
That has an overview of, here's our schedule, this is what we've reviewed, here's the outcomes for each one of these, so that there's transparency, because right now it's like, where are the old, they're just not, there, this information isn't available.
Okay,
And
great. So
scheduling is good to line up with the information as it comes in too. Like I felt so bad. Monica was sitting there and we're asking her questions about this year's data. Well, it's embargoed. I can't use it. So
Yeah.
it's a very bad position for you to be in, right?
That's actually why I came up, so, for round 2 of the equity monitoring report. So I'm putting together more longitudinal data, and I wanted to ask the board around. I'd like to put in 2025, spring 2025 data, so you have 23, 24, 25. If the board is amenable to that, we would have to wait until November, until the 25 data is unembargoed. The other option is to forego 25 and do 22, 23, 24, and look at that in October, but you're kind of not getting.
Does any board member wanna say that we should monitor this before November? No. So that's fine.
No, I think that's perfectly
Okay.
fine.
Yeah, no, and it doesn't make much sense to do 22, 23, 24 because it's not the same scale.
Okay, so I would,
Maybe when you're looking at the future schedule.
Yeah, like the
Maybe
curriculum.
put that in.
now.
Yeah,
So
maybe
usually
in the
schedule-
December
Maybe someone do.
Yeah, and it is good timing in line with the budget, right, of like helping us identify gaps and priorities and resources.
Excellent.
And I like the idea that once we have it, then that becomes something that rolls. So that you have 23, 24, 25, 26,
Yep.
and we can see it over time.
Until they change the testing.
What was that?
Until they change the testing.
Yeah, right.
okay, so I think what I'm hearing is that we should, ask. Laura to talk to the VSBA, get a quote for an audit. And, maybe ask the VSBA to, well, depending on the complexity of the audit, either present to us at a school board meeting. Or one of us can just explain what's going on.
Yeah.
And then I think my opinion, well, and then separately, we should push back monitoring of anything
Okay, well,
until
January.
January.
And then reevaluate.
Except
that.
equity.
Except equity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we think that we need to take a motion on that, just because it seems pretty serious? If we need to take a motion, we'll take it next week.
Okay.
But for now, I think the board has agreed that we can move back until January, all but treatment of, or I'm sorry, equity.
Yeah.
And then the final thing would be, I think we should ask, Michelle to meet with Joe to get the conversation started. I don't necessarily think you should, in my opinion, wait for the VSBA. I think you guys should just start talking, and then once you have the VSBA information, you can use that to enrich.
We have a meeting scheduled for
Yeah,
Friday.
we'll repurpose.
So is that cool that the board basically is saying, Michelle, talk to them about monitoring?
You too. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Michelle.
you.
yeah, sounds good, yeah.
Great, any other?
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Any other thoughts on, policy monitoring? Great. We'll move on to the next, discussion item, which is project management. And so this has come up on a number of board meetings, and we keep kicking the can down the road on it. I think that Jen is advocating for a particular framework for project management, you know, board work management, which is called RACI. And that just, it hasn't gotten traction such that it could stick around. Like at one point felt like last
April.
year, April, we actually opened up a spreadsheet at a board meeting and wrote down what, and wrote down all kinds of things.
To bring.
Well, you could do it right now. I mean, Michelle just is taking on the auditing or the policy monitoring, and so that'd be a line in the racing. And Michelle would be the person who is responsible. And. Right.
So my thought about the RACI though, is I think you're always supposed to do the simplest thing you can. And my question is, why can't this, maybe being devil's advocate here, but, you know, why can't we just have a simple list of what each board member is kind of like taking on individually to report back to the board? Like, why do we need to go beyond just a simple list?
Well, if we're looking for project management, I think that there is a model there that is like the simplest, which is DRI, so the directly responsible individual. So who's the person who's in charge of that, and then they have like latitude to, you know, bring other people in or organize a Google Doc or whatever they need to achieve for work. But if we're just trying to keep it lean, just one person, DRI, who is the person who's in charge of this? Michelle is in charge of
Wouldn't
this.
this be part of the board training, like, sorry, since it like part of the board training? Right? I mean, that's where it came up.
Well, I think we can decide to make a list of things, to almost like a to-do list. I think that's within our competencies.
Well, and I can imagine a RACI coming into play after we get some momentum as a
Yeah,
board, and like,
Yeah.
maybe we make that list that you're talking about, and the first thing on it can be Laura's gonna talk to the VSBA about an audit, and Michelle's gonna meet about, so at least it just has a running list of what we're doing.
To-do list.
And then as we start to work as a team together, then maybe a RACI would be something, because I understand the importance of it. I'm a project manager and I don't actually like RACI charts, but I do understand that they can be helpful, and maybe as we start to work as a more competent team together, it could be something that we could,
Yeah,
work
and
on
I
different
think,
things.
part of it was too, when we were thinking about it, is that was just a term we had thrown out, that who could do it. There could be a number of different tools you could use, but the thought is to have some kind of map. Like, these are all the things that we might be working on or through. So it could be, the committee discussions, like, okay, who's on what point for participation in what committees? Who is, the engagements with student representatives? Onboarding new board members, like, is there a really good process regarding how we do that and ensuring that anybody that's new to the board has the tools that they need and, perhaps training or something to kind of get them up and running? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like thinking through, what are the board actions and efforts that we need to do, and then ensuring that we've got everything captured in one place, and who's on point to kind of handle these things so that things don't drop. Newspaper articles, as an example. And then the other thing was, I'll just add to that, is you have these things, and some of them are just recurring, ongoing activities. Some of them are gonna be one-off things that might happen. But then what I was trying to do was overlay it like a Gantt chart type of thing, because there are some things that need to be happening at a particular frequency, like reporting to the paper. Or, if we're gonna be doing articles or that type of thing. So it's kind of merging all of this. Another idea was the strategic plan. Our strategic plan is, 20-something years old, so. That would be another topic, like, these are kind of our wish list. What are the things that we need to be working towards as a board? And who's kind of gonna be on point to do what? That
So
was
I'd like
the
to
whole thing.
make a proposal that we start small. And we
Yep.
only write down the things that people are currently gonna assign themselves to. And as opposed to anticipating future needs, like onboarding the board members, and just start with just a divvy, so like, for example, I put something on screen here, this is just an idea. We just said Laura, report, this, VSBA, policy audit. Right? So I think that, like, this represents what we just asked ourselves to do.
Oh, sorry, let me defer.
No, go ahead.
I like starting simple and also trying to get to a point I think Jennifer is trying to get to, which is understanding that some responsibilities are in perpetuity and some are expiring, and we need to see what's coming and where to start it. If we could add maybe one other item, which is, this is an ongoing responsibility, it's a perpetual one, or this is a expiring one, right? Here's the time, right? This is a 1 month to 2 month, and then it's done. So it's like, that might help us say, like, we're done these three things, but Jen has this ongoing thing she continues to do, that will help us, like, in the Gantt chart sense.
Yeah, and I would say, like, when I think about what Laura is going to be doing, I see that as falling under policy governance. And there's gonna be a number of items that fall underneath that. One of them would be, all right, we're gonna do an audit. One of them is going to be creating the schedule. One of them is going to be creating, a scorecard or something for the policy governance that we do for those monitoring reports that we look through. I mean, I can see some of that, detail there.
We only have 5 more minutes. So discussion, I'm sorry.
So I would propose that if anybody else has things like. Perhaps we start with something very simple, like what I have on my screen here. And then, right now, is there anything else? Like, one thing that I am interested in getting more answers about, and I'm hearing a lot about, is, IEPs, and so I might like to self-sign. Just working with Joe to get some more answers about special ed. Rates and You know, like our ability, you know, do we have enough coverage for kids and all that stuff, so I might wanna self-assign.
If
this.
you can, I would just suggest, I see what you're doing, but I had already started one. Some of these things are in here and it's got a lot, and I shared some of this with you if you want to modify it. But I can resend this. This was the Racy and it has a lot of stuff in here, but I shared this.
Why don't you share your screen and I'll just. Are you on Zoom?
Oh, yeah.
Is this something we want public facing? for the
Yeah,
community?
I'm gonna,
It is
yeah, I've got
public
a call for the orders of the day, because I find it really interesting when we're ahead, we slow it down, but when we're way behind, but,
Okay, why don't I
so-
just send this, if I can.
The only reason that I propose that we continue and run a little late is because I don't wanna kick the can on this and then have it come up at the future board.
then I would propose that we strike some of these other items.
We could potentially do that. But let's finish is there broad consensus that we should move on to the next topic at this point?
Can I add something before we move on? Is that okay?
I don't think we're gonna move on unless multiple people speak up and say we should move on.
I want.
Yes, so
But I do.
while Jen is sharing her screen, go ahead.
Something Jen just mentioned that I would love to be on there is designating someone for communication with me and Momen as the student representatives. I know like we had a discussion about making sure we're being communicated to about special board meetings that were planned or like any materials for meetings being sent to us. And the only communication that we got about a special meeting was because of Delina sending us over the link for it. So I think it would be amazing if that was decided today and it made it a little easier for us.
So Delina sent it to you, right?
Yeah,
That was part of what we talked about, I thought that
she would send over the link for like the agendas that are posted
Right.
online, but we had a discussion about any of the stuff that you guys were looking at
Support material.
that wasn't on the public thing. But the board was.
I think it's a
looking at.
valid ask to say,
Yeah, I see.
can we as student reps have somebody who is kind of assigned to us? to
Yeah.
help?
Like when there's a special meeting that's decided between you guys and we're not part of that conversation, someone emails us and goes, hey, there's a special meeting that's gonna be on this date.
Yes.
So that we immediately know and can try to work our
Does
schedule.
anybody wanna volunteer for that? I know that we may end up using a different screen, but I just wanna write down, is there anybody?
Yeah, when this first came up, I was sort of took on the responsibility of sending you guys the information about certain meetings that were scheduled, and I guess I didn't even think of this particular one as a special meeting, so, but I'm happy to take on
Okay.
that role.
So now let's look at what Jen,
Yeah, it's up there, it's sharing. You should, if you go to your thing, you should be able to see it.
see, in my opinion, this is what I was saying, I think that it's too much of a step for us to already move to full project management of all the potential topics. That's just my.
Well, and this was just brainstorm, like we can even prioritize and say, we're not gonna get to this. This was just something that came up when we did it came up during our retreat, so this is a great retreat activity. Which if we get together November, December, whenever it is, like we can resurrect this and go back and look at it. Cause this was some of the information that we had from that I pulled into this and then kind of grew it a little bit more.
You
So-
can make it a little bit bigger. Just hit, command shift plus.
So we had in here, again, this was from several weeks ago. But these were the district initiatives.
Let me give you an example of why I think this might be the perfect, I mean, and I'm not trying to, I think that it's unlikely that we're gonna be able to come up with a full grid. Splitting up who's responsible, who's accountable, and all those things for all of these items.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so what I might propose is that we just start with like that board assignment sheet, and then you can turn that into the RACI, your interpretation, then at the next time we talk about this, for example, at the board retreat in December, then you can say, okay, let's upgrade from what were the simple list into a full RACI. I just don't think we can drop straight into a RACI.
Yeah. Well, and these things here, just looking at when I was talking about a map, like you've got district initiatives, there could be board business, there's board governance, community outreach and engagement and training. And those are just high level. Because there's a lot of different topics. So again, you can hide things and say, well, what are the things that we want to look at? And you don't even need to have the racy component here. But, you know, however we want to do it. So what are
I
some
think that
other?
we should upgrade into RACI.
Mhm.
And so my proposal on this is that we start with writing down what the current assignments of the board are. And then for example, you could break that out because just because you're responsible for it doesn't mean you could show us what that looks like when you break out. And so like, for example, you know, on your screen, you have treatment and community policy refresh. That is not surfaced right now on the list of board
Mhm.
assignments. And so I would argue that that means that it's not urgent enough to be on our list right now. But
And we could have a parking lot. You could move things down to a parking lot, so you don't lose it, because this was something we had talked about at one point. You know what I mean?
so is I think we might be able to leave it here and basically say, this is the work, so I'm gonna share my screen again. These are the assignments that we currently know about. Would you close that, So these are the assignments that we just talked about. I would propose that we stop here for now and we just say these are. But if there's anything missing from here, if we, for example, if we know that we need to write a newspaper article, we don't have somebody currently assigned to that. Right? And is there anything else that anybody is personally interested? I just volunteered for IEP. Anything else in terms of?
I'd like to be involved whenever we are ready as a board, and it's premature on a redistricting conversation committee discussion with legislators, just to understand more about how that impacts us. I'd like to volunteer for that.
Okay, so we have a meeting with legislators on October 10th. And so you should be on that call. So redistricting. Legislators. So and also this should serve to say that like we shouldn't assign too much to any one person. So any other?
I don't quite see how strategic plan aligns with superintendent committees.
Okay, great, thank you. I wrote that note down because I thought that the agreement around strategic plan was that was gonna be a superintendent led initiative. I could be totally wrong about that. My understanding is.
Oh, you're talking superintendent committees. The superintendent committees you're talking about, okay, I'm thinking two different things, okay? I was thinking superintendent search committee, and that's why I wasn't.
Oh, no,
my head was-
superintendent committees.
Gotcha, okay. No,
So
that's fine.
superintendent committee, this is
Give
like
me Control Z, bring that back.
Curriculum one.
Yeah, that's,
curriculum.
yeah, that's fine.
Room curriculum, room finance.
Finance.
Right. Those are the only two we started with, and then we said we'll add more.
Cool,
Okay.
great. And you're in,
Gotcha.
Jen is our person that you're working with on superintendent
All
committees.
righty then.
Perfect. Is that fine with everybody? Great, okay. I think we can move on from this.
Ask another very
Yeah.
quick question. Are things like the calls with the redistricting with legislators, things me and Loman are allowed to be involved in?
Yes, I don't see why not. I don't.
And that's why I was like trying to bring up the having someone like Emily who would know like, hey, when something like that comes up, then she's responsible for communicating that to us and like it takes off that.
And the student in the committees, because we'd like to have a student committee, how is that gonna be different? Would that be part of like the superintendent committee, or would that be something different?
I'll let you and Joe figure that
Okay.
out, you know what I mean? Okay, and I should note, last note on this as we move beyond it, is that this Google Doc will not be collaboratively edited with any other members of the board. If people want to change things on this, they'll have to email me to change it to satisfy open meeting law. Any other
Okay.
thoughts on, just getting a list of things to work on and managing those projects? Okay, so next, item is board training. And so I may turn it over straight to Joe. What training do you think we should do?
Yeah, well, I mean, you sent a doodle out, I think an initial probably half day, maybe 4 hours, with, I would, defer to the school board association, you know, we have, and just explain them. We have a new superintendent, we have several new board members, we have several new administrators. I want it to be my administrative team and the board where we're talking about, they've done this 1,000 times, I'm sure, but communication styles, expectations, all of those sorts of things. Yeah, please.
And we had talked about too, as a central office team, inviting or offering the board anti-racist training that's parallel to what our teachers, staff, and administrators are undergoing, just so we can all start to work and build.
Never done
So
that.
maybe not at the retreat, but I think absolutely,
Yeah. Mhm.
absolutely.
That's a great idea.
So I might, based on that, I might propose that Laura, as our liaison with BSBA, ask them about, the cost and the proposed agenda for BSB training for a early December retreat. And the context of what Joe just said is that I sent out a scheduling link for the board to pick a day in the first 2 weeks of December to do a retreat with the board plus the executive staff of the district.
And were you thinking, Monica, that we would join like the staff or,
We could do one unique to the board.
yeah, and it
Yeah,
would have to be.
and that training is free.
Great, right.
Is there anything beyond the anti-racist training that was just suggested and the VSBA training that the board wants to talk about getting for itself?
I just see this as a first meeting, and then I believe a really functional board does ongoing training annually,
Yep.
you know.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
That's where I think getting these calendars and schedules together are something.
I agree.
You know, as well, just so that we. Go back to this board assignments here, and I want to note for Michelle that. One of the things we're specifically interested in is a calendar of monitoring on the website, just as a note of things that we want to be sure to be transparent about. So the next item on the agenda is the permanent superintendent search. Obviously, we heard from Daisy during public comment that it would be good to start this as soon as possible. I also know that out of respect for our interim superintendent, we should know who the top candidates are, you know, in December if possible, so that you know, if we don't go with Dr. Joe, then he has a chance to, he's not waiting until spring of next year to start whatever
Right.
personal decisions he has. So I would suggest that we immediately start to and potentially take action next week on October 8th to start the superintendent search.
So that means deciding when we're gonna get to help us.
So that's so we should talk about today is, do we want to use the BSBA again, or do we want to go with one of the more expensive commercial executive search firms?
Can I just ask the individuals who are on the committee, that brought us Dr. Joe Clark, what their recommendations based on that, we haven't gone through that process recently?
I thought the VSBA did a phenomenal job.
I would agree. And we
Yeah,
have
I'd be
we have the
there.
relationship and we have, okay, we have the relationship with them. Price is probably right because they've done a lot of the legwork.
They're great to work with as a
And they,
candidate.
yeah, as a candidate, yeah, so, I mean,
That gets my question.
I would agree.
Daisy and Jean Marie.
I would echo what you just said, Laura, in that, as the budget manager for the school district, I would like to encourage you to use a thoughtful and affordable process. I know that, we heard from other outside organizations that seemed really lovely. and we're very expensive, and I am concerned about a large expense like that.
Right,
Right, and I felt like we really bonded with Elaine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I was just very respectful, and.
And
very
efficient
And efficient.
effective.
And, yeah,
And perhaps we could ask for her again.
yeah, I was just gonna say that, she has gotten to know the
oh, I think.
district so well, in that search.
Yeah.
And I will completely admit, I sat here in front of you saying we should not do them the first time, and we should go with the larger organization. I have changed my mind.
Oh, that's it, okay.
Yeah, so that's one
Well, for me.
And yeah,
And I
completely.
I would be, I don't know, whatever, because I know there was a questionnaire that went out after the fact that people could provide feedback. But I would suggest that probably all of the committee that participated, the 14 people that were part of that, I think all had pretty good feedback.
Absolutely.
My one concern, having been on the committee, which is, I just. It's, how are they going to put us on the national ads?
But she did that.
But she did.
She did that.
She did.
She did for this.
Oh, I'm very happy. My only concern, like, again, one of the most important jobs of, school board is
Most important job.
employing a superintendent.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's number one.
And so I just, before, I'm playing devil's advocate here a bit. If we decide to go with the VSBA, one of the things that they told us in their presentation was that they do not, like, for example, they don't have a staff of people that are scrolling through LinkedIn and looking for candidates. And I think that had been originally one of the things that you had suggested that we have.
We can also, we can
See what's on there. Say, we can do that. We can, it's gonna be a huge committee.
Yeah.
As a superintendent, I could tell you where I look for postings are the National Superintendent Association.
Yeah,
They have
and
a
that's
job
what she's
site.
posting.
That's
on.
what you need to do, to get into their location
Yeah,
and,
She indicated she had quite a bit of interest in the permanent position, but not necessarily the interim position. So while we may not have seen anyone on the finalist list that came directly from them, I think we'll see that in.
All right, so do people feel that we need to discuss this anymore today? And do they feel prepared, or they need more information such that we could schedule this for action next week?
Do we have a good sense of the range of non-VSBA options? Because I know we heard from one other. Is that right?
yeah, they're about.
And they were-
7,000.
Right.
Six meetings. Well, that's,
Six.
yeah, I don't think it's.
yeah, that sounds about right.
Did we not vote on it today because it's not listed as an action
No, it's
item?
not.
We're not voting.
No, we-
To be clear, we could,
I know, but I-
but we shouldn't. We could, but we should.
Get this on the next,
Yeah, I think the next week.
so that people can tell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for the record, I won't be here next week. My daughter's getting married. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts from the superintendent search? Great. So the next,
I'm sorry, can I have a quick question? Is that cost, because I remember the cost for the interim search was 12,000. Is that, I believe,
that is the cost that they quoted us for a permanent search, and they said that if the interim search was less work, they might go below it, but they didn't end up doing that, so
okay,
Yeah.
we can estimate that going to the SBA would cost about $12,000, going with a big commercial national firm would be about $60,000. Anything else on that? Great, next topic, next community forum. So our first community forum had 3 topics. They were meet the superintendent. What budget number should we set? And, what committees do you want to be on? My personal criticism of it, self-criticism, is that I think that we did not get as many non-school community members, and so I would like to propose that for future community forums, we might consider doing it at the senior center or you know, something like that, but, I think what we really need is a next topic for a community forum, and then we can kind of gel around that.
Budget,
Another budget one.
just do budget,
I think
splits it.
continue
Yeah,
budget
just continue budget.
and maybe we could aim to share whatever we know at that time
Great.
that we are digesting.
So do it after we've heard from,
So that'll be
Right.
what,
Yeah.
November?
Right, so in the spirit of making sure the community is fully aware of the forum.
And you can get the point across, which we all agree with, that we don't control.
Right.
A lot of the
Yeah,
costs.
that's a good time
Just
for
keep
that.
putting that out at every.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a perfect place. Here are the costs we already know about that we're incorporating. Here's how we are considering incorporating them. Here are the unknowns. And here's what we're doing based on these unknowns and, you know, we're working through this. So I think it's important for a community to know how challenging it is gonna be to try and get to a number that they are supportive of while also digesting numbers that are outside of our.
okay, so what I'm hearing is it okay if it's a December community forum? So we'll do a December community forum and it'll be about budget. And over the next couple of months, if we wanna add topics to it, we can add topics to it, but the foundational thing will be budget.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on community forum?
And it'll be a rotation.
And what do you guys think about doing it, for example, at the senior center?
Yeah,
Yep, I do
excellent
too.
idea.
Go to people, stop asking them to come to us, it's not working.
Well, actually, for open meeting law, is that a challenge? We might be invited. Let's see, maybe we could explore that. I don't know if we should. do that now. We need to make sure we can comply.
We can.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a burden on the district, but it is, you know, we can do it. And we might also, if that fails, the city might have, at the very least, it might be in the city auditoriums. Or, you know, there's crazier ideas like doing it. But we're good for now, I think.
The other thing I think would be good to do is if we have any feedback or information from the advisory committees that we're doing. And I think that would also be, you know, something that could be shared perhaps.
Yeah, I don't know that they'll, hopefully we'll have at least one meeting before that.
Okay.
Yes, yep,
Okay, well, I won't add that to the agenda yet, but if it does seem like the curriculum committee or the finance committee has some stuff to report about. The superintendent committees on those things, then we'll have that. Great, okay, so we'll move on. Our next. We caught up yet? Yeah. Our next topic is an action item. This is action on policy amendment 2.9, which I will put on my screen now.
So I'm wondering if this is, we've just been asked by our superintendent to put a halt on this. So I would move to.
That's not
not-
Monitor,
This is
this is
not
an
moderate.
amendment. This
This
is,
is an amendment.
but I would suggest if. I would say just, I mean, even based on the feedback that we have and the fact that we're going over and it's
Yeah,
holy
that's-
night for
that's-
people. I would suggest strike this and put this on perhaps next week's agenda, because that was also feedback that we received during public comment,
Yeah.
is that this is an opportunity for the public to comment on this topic. So that would be my
Right now, it's
recommendation.
sundown, it's Yom Kippur, and I think
Yeah.
that we should
Yeah.
not do that.
That would be my suggestion. And it sounds like we're agree.
So we will move this to next week. In terms of, so the next item on our agenda, do you have anything you want to talk about?
I know we're short for time, but,
Now we're right.
We're actually right on time. Yeah.
I will not take 10 minutes, but I do have a few things I'd like to talk about. First of all, I want, just for the public to hear, you know, there was a recent needle incident at Richmond Central School. And we did have a multi-agency meeting on September 25th with school administration, our facilities folks, school nurse, operations and finance, the police department, there were city council folks there, and we are taking steps immediately. We are going to put up an 8-foot security fence that will have a buffer between the current fence that is there behind the McDonald's property and our school. So if folks are using needles and decide to discard them, they will not be able to throw them all the way over onto the playground. There'll be a gate so we can clean it out. We are going to install motion sensor lighting because some folks are actually going onto our playground at night and not doing it for McDonald's, so we're hoping that that lighting will maybe scare them away. Vegetation management, where we will, take out, as much vegetation as we can that, allows people to hide. And we're talking with McDonald's about taking care of their fence. And we're just really grateful for the city. I can't speak enough about how impressed I've been with the city of South Burlington and the staff there and the police department and council and everybody's been just outstanding. It's a great relationship that we should be very, very grateful for. I have started putting together the 3 questions. I talked about this in my interview. I've talked about it a lot. So we have, at this point, identified about 50 some community groups. I emailed them all on Monday to ask them if they would please invite me to one of their meetings. I have about 7 or 8 scheduled already, starting this Monday. And I'll follow up later this week with all the folks that haven't responded yet. But again, I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna take somebody with me to take notes. What do you like about South Burlington schools? What can we do better? What do you expect of the superintendent? We will gather all that information. I think that will be very helpful in me helping with my priorities, but also I think that would be really beneficial for a strategic plan when we get to that point. There will also, I know, there are some folks who maybe aren't in any of these community groups. We will make sure that it is that I have open calls towards the end of this where via Zoom or via public meeting where any community members that were not in any of those groups can come out. My goal is to get to as many people as we possibly can to get that feedback.
And Joe, did you add the synagogue and the Islamic Society to your list? Okay.
Yep, they're on there.
Out of curiosity, what's the first, the one on Monday?
It is. Starts Tuesday, the SBBA. Yes. Yeah, and then I have the Orchard PTO, a bunch of, right? Finally, I put this in a board update, but I think I'm happy about this because I think that people love South Burlington schools and they want to represent, right? And we have a great store on our website with great gear. Might be a little pricier than what we would know that some of our folks can afford. So we are entering into a partnership with a place called Ohio Pile Prints. They're not from Ohio. I have no relation to them. They're both Ohio Pile. They're out of Pennsylvania. Anyway, what they will do is they will print South Burlington gear. It'll be available in like your local, like Walgreens and CVS's. Should be able to buy. It'll be more reasonably priced, and they will give 7% of the profit back to us, which we will put into a fund really designated for student activities, be it either athletics or music or art, whatever it's going to be. We'll make more decisions after we get that first check, which I don't expect it's going to be a ton, right? More important to me is that we're going to be able to allow folks who want to represent without spending, $80 on a shirt to be able to find something. So look for that. I don't know, in a couple months, maybe you'll start seeing it. And if you go now, if you haven't noted, I was in a drugstore the other day and Essex had a whole rack of stuff. And I went up and sure enough, there's Ohio Pile and it looked like good stuff. So I'm happy about that. And thanks to Ken, who has been really the spearhead of that.
Oh, great, thank you. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Ken.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. And we can discuss any scheduling for October 8th over email.
I will move to adjourn.
Second, any discussion? All in favor?
We had